Unexpected loss. How removing my name from her guest list led to my sister's $2.8 million house crisis. Emily Johnson had never felt such an overwhelming wave of panic wash over her. The news of her job loss echoed in her mind like a relentless drumbeat. How could she face her sister, Sarah, who was right in the midst of her lavish wedding planning? Sarah had always been the ambitious go-getter, rumored to collect awards like medals in her real estate career, while Emily barely clung to her academic post in economics. Each afternoon, as Emily sifted through endless job listings, she felt the edges of her pride and confidence fraying significantly. It had been an easy decision, removing herself from Sarah's guest list a necessary act of self-preservation, she told herself. But with each passing day, guilt constricted her heart tighter. Like a noose she couldn't loosen as the days turned into weeks. The sights and sounds of Sarah's extravagant wedding preparation seeped through the cracks of Emily's walls. The grandeur promised nothing short of perfection, a $2.8 million extravaganza that Emily couldn't help but resent even more. Planning a wedding should be joyful, yet the staggering figures and high expectations left Emily's stomach churning. Would it even be possible for her sister to pull it off? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. But the turmoil didn't stop there. As Emily's mounting fear whispered to her that she needed to act, she threw herself into extra hours at her part-time job, subservient and vulnerable, risking her own dwindling savings to help Sarah's dream materialize. Every dollar siphoned for overpriced flowers or metallic invitations felt like a stab of derision toward her own situation. The more she tried to contribute, the more she unearthed dark family secrets, financial skeletons buried so deep they might never be excavated. Why were they spending so much? What hidden pressures possessed Sarah, pushing her to chase perfection? Emily's heart raced with urgency as she pieced together the family dynamics. Questions plagued her mind. Had they lost sight of their values? Was ambition leading her sister astray? The breaking point arrived unexpectedly on the patio of their childhood home. Sarah, disheveled and in tears, confronted Emily, her eyes steely with accusation. "You could have supported me. Instead, you abandoned me when I needed you the most." Each word cut deeper, fracturing their bond. In that moment, emotions spilled over like a dam, breaking. Jealousy, resentment, and doubt swirled between them, snuffing out what remained of their sisterly love. Emily recoiled, feeling the weight of her sacrifices clawing at her own heart. They stood on the edge of an abyss, trepidation thick as fog, leaving the air heavy with uncertainty. Could they ever reclaim what was almost lost? In the suffocating silence, one question loomed: could they steer the course back to unity? Or had ambition severed the trust that once held them together? Their sisterly bond wavered, teetering on the precipice, as both women wrestled with the high stakes of love and loss. Emily stood frozen, the heaviness of the moment pressing down on her like an unyielding weight. The confrontation with Sarah had shattered something fundamental in their relationship, leaving jagged edges where trust had once blazed. Sorrow and resentment danced in a delicate balance, igniting a storm within Emily that demanded acknowledgement. As she gazed into her sister's tear-streaked face, anger clawed its way to the surface. How could Sarah have put her in such a position of betrayal? Yet guilt joined the fray. It gnawed at her conscience and deepened the fissures in her heart. Emily realized their conflict wasn't merely about weddings or money, it was a reflection of their diverging paths, shadowed by expectations and ambition. Retreating from the emotional battlefield, Emily needed to reassess her situation. She could no longer merely exist on the periphery. The urgency of her circumstances pressed upon her. The job listings had transformed from mundane tasks to desperate pleas for a new beginning. Sitting alone in her dimly lit room that night, she opened her laptop and stared at the screen, a vast abyss of possibilities and potential failures. "Stop hiding," she muttered to herself, her voice raw and uncertain. It was time for a change. No more shying away from challenges, no more feeling like a victim in her own life. She began to draft an email to the local university, expressing her interest in applying to their economics program. Returning to academia would not only enhance her credentials, but sharpen her competitive edge in the job market. Digging deep inside her, Emily found a flicker of ambition she hadn't realized still glowed within. With each keystroke, the familiar weight on her shoulders lessened. This was her plan, her path forward no longer dictated by Sarah's wedding or familial dynamics. It was as though a transformative light had been flipped on inside her, illuminating shadows of self-doubt she thought would always linger. Days passed, and the application process became a routine of hope and skill honing. Emily took courses online, worked diligently at her part-time job, strategically saving whatever little remained of her earnings. Each day brought her closer to a version of herself she'd long neglected. The growth was palpable, a stark contrast to how she felt listening to the exuberant discussions around Sarah's overblown wedding details. Yet even as she pursued her ambition, the rift with Sarah loomed heavily in her mind. Their relationship had turned muddied. The venomous accusations served only to deepen the chasm between them. Could this newfound ambition coexist with her sister's relentless pursuit of perfection? Their worldviews felt irreparably opposed. Sarah was chasing the illusion of success, while Emily was digging her heels into a more sustainable vision of her future. The distance grew insurmountable, and while Emily strove for professional and personal growth, it did not alleviate the ache of familial bonds. Every now and then she would receive a panicked phone call or text from Sarah, filled with wedding woes, yet her responses grew shorter, more detached. Emily felt a creeping anxiety. Was she sacrificing her relationship for self-improvement? It was a precarious balance that couldn't last. One evening, consumed by frustration, Emily was compelled to reach out. She texted her sister, "Can we talk? We need to face this." Heart racing, she awaited Sarah's response. What revelations awaited them? Would they have the courage to confront the fissures threatening their bond? As she stared at her phone's screen, anticipation swirled with trepidation. The moment was upon her. Would they find the strength to reconcile? Or would ambition claim the final victory between their sibling rivalry? The luminous glow of her phone screen pulled Emily from her spiraling thoughts. Sarah's text finally arrived, terse and laden with unease. "Fine. Let us talk. Tomorrow 3 p.m. The next day loomed over Emily like a thundercloud, anticipation and dread weaving a tightening knot in her stomach. She dressed meticulously, opting for a tailored sweater that accentuated her intention to present a confident front. It struck her as ironic she was dressed for a confrontation rather than a reconciliation. As the clock ticked closer to 3, Emily, grappling with her thoughts, flipped through her notes for the economics program she'd been diligently preparing. Each bullet point reflected just how far she'd come, yet her heart remained ensnared in the uncertainty of their relationship. She was determined to stay true to her burgeoning self while attempting to navigate the emotional debris of their past. When Sarah arrived, the air between them felt charged, as if the room itself anticipated the confrontation that needed to unfold. Sarah's expression was guarded, her makeup expertly applied, though Emily noticed the dullness in her eyes masked behind the facade. The unspoken words hovered like a fog in the room, waiting for Emily to break the silence. "Thanks for coming," Emily started, her voice steadier than she felt. "I think we need to talk about everything that's happened." Sarah crossed her arms defensively. "So, you finally decided to come out of your little bubble of self-improvement?" A flash of anger ignited within Emily but was quickly quashed by a wave of resolve. This was not only about them. It was about who she had become. They had both reached points where their priorities no longer aligned, but there was value in honesty. "I know we've both been struggling," Emily replied, her tone more tempered. "But I'm trying to forge my own path. This is not about ignoring you or your life, it's about claiming my own." Sarah's stance softened slightly, but her skepticism lingered. "You think this is easy for me? All I've done is plan a life I thought would make us proud, not just the wedding but everything that comes with it. I thought you'd be with me through it." "I want to be," Emily confessed, her voice thickening with emotion. "But it feels like we're heading in different directions. I can't be part of a plan that doesn't include room for my own dreams. I've applied to school, Sarah. I need to focus on my career." A silence fell between them, pregnant with confusion and hurt. Emily fought the urge to backpedal, to apologize for her newfound ambition that challenged the script they had written together. Sarah broke the silence, her voice a whisper. Why does it have to be this way? Why can't we both have what we want? Because I need to choose myself, Emily asserted, leaving no room for doubt. And maybe, just maybe, you need to realize that you're worth isn't tied to this wedding or what others think of you. Sarah's eyes flashed with frustration, and Emily braced herself for a retort. Instead, tears spilled down her cheeks, blurring the delicate balance of vulnerability and anger. Empathy surged in Emily's heart, reigniting the longing for connection they once shared. As they collided in a moment wrapped in grief and understanding, Emily felt the weight of their past begin to shift. It was painful, but perhaps true healing required this confrontation. Just as Sarah reached for Emily's hand, the tension was interrupted by a buzzing phone. A text notification flashed across Emily's screen, drawing her attention and popping the fragile bubble. Urgent. Regarding your application, immediate response needed. Their moment shattered, replaced by the cold reality of opportunities slipping through her fingers. As Emily glanced back at her sister, a realization washed over her. Her path toward personal growth would not only be scarce with challenges but riddled with distractions. Okay, I will help you with the wedding, Emily declared suddenly, though anger and confusion followed her words. But first I need to handle this. Would this decision cost her more than she anticipated, or could it blend their ambitions into something new? The door to their reconciliation was ajar, but would it remain open as Emily ventured deeper into her ambitions? Emily's heart raced as she tapped on the notification, bringing her back to the pressing demands of her future. The text blinked insistently, reminding her of the application that could alter the course of her life, a graduate program she had fought to gain acceptance into. It was a blend of fear and excitement that coursed through her veins. Each acceptance would validate her hard work, but also usher in further sacrifices. Just a minute, she muttered to Sarah, who stood by, rigid and uncertain. Composing herself quickly, she acknowledged the urgency of both situations, the needs of her sister and her own ambitions. She focused on the email, typing a reply as her mind swirled with persistent doubts. Could she truly balance these diverging paths without losing herself? After sending the message, Emily turned her attention back to Sarah. There was a moment of stillness where both of them seemed to search for a new normal amidst the chaos. Okay, about the wedding, Sarah began, her voice shaky yet determined. I want to help you, but I also need to prioritize my application process, Emily interjected, feeling an intuitive jolt at the slight sadness in her sister's eyes. I mean, it is just so important for me to get this right. Yet, she noticed that the more she spoke, the more she detached from the emotional vortex of their relationship. Helping her sister organize a wedding overshadowed her own aspirations, and the resentment slowly seeped in. Would she perpetuate feelings of obligation and regret, or find a way to support Sarah that didn't swallow her whole? I can't just postpone my life while you work through this, Sarah shot back defensively. What about us? What about the promise we made to support each other? Emily inhaled deeply, feeling the familiar anxiety claw its way up her throat. They had long operated under the same expectations, but now it felt stifling. She wanted to scream that she could no longer be bound to the mantra of familial loyalty, if it meant sacrificing every fiber of her ambition. Sarah, she said carefully, I know you feel like I'm abandoning our plans, but I'm also trying to build a life that's mine. You can still have your wedding dreams, but I can't be your everything. I want more for both of us. Both women were suspended in vulnerability. Emily felt the weight of her decisions pressing against her chest. Fine, Sarah said finally, her brows knitted, a mix of hurt and acceptance swirling in her demeanor. But don't expect me to feel grateful. I'll do this on my own. You can have your path and I'll find mine too. The statement hung between them, a fragile acknowledgement of their new realities. Yet Emily could not shake off the sting of guilt. In that moment of choosing herself, she felt as though she had unleashed an unknown force, one which would irreversibly alter their relationship. As Sarah turned to leave, a wave of distress washed over Emily. Decisions in life rarely fit neatly into a timeline, and they seemed to be spiraling into uncertainty. Did her ambition come at too high a price? With the throbbing silence stretching in the wake of Sarah's departure, Emily reached for her phone, her fingers shaking as she revisited her email draft. Opportunities awaited, yet they were tangled with the ramifications of leaving behind what had once defined her. As she breathed deeply to calm the turmoil, a new message pinged on her screen. It was from the Program S coordinator. Please confirm your attendance for next week's orientation. Emily's stomach churned the choice before her cast a long shadow. Was she ready to forge ahead into an untested future? With urgency twisting in her gut, she clicked the screen, her resolve colliding with her hesitations. Could stepping into this new chapter be worth the cost of what she might lose? Determined to strengthen her footing, she leaned into the keyboard. Little did she know, her next decision could set off a chain of events with consequences far beyond her own sphere. Emily stared unblinking at the confirmation email on her screen, her heart battling with her mind. The jolt of emotional turmoil was palpable. Each click further entrenched her in the chaotic landscape of choices looming ahead. What had once felt like an exhilarating step towards her future now echoed as a clarion call of isolation. The responsibility of leaving her old life behind weighed heavier with every passing second. A voice inside her head repeated Sarah's words. "You can have your path and I'll find mine too." They simmered with unspoken resentments, a reminder of an unwelcome truth. Ambition could fracture love. She craved validation and independence, yet the shattering of old bonds felt akin to a betrayal. Desperate to find equilibrium, Emily filled her afternoons with preparation for the orientation, diving headfirst into research about her prospective program. The prospect of learning invigorated her. She studied meticulously, jotting down notes, absorbing literature on leadership and innovation. Each fragment of information sparked a warmth in her chest, the echoes of her past ambitions reminding her why she had fought to get here. Still, she couldn't silence the disquieting doubts. As she perused her textbook material, her mind wandered back to Sarah and the burgeoning rift between them. Perhaps it would have been easier if the wedding planning had consumed both of them. A collaborative venture where ambitions dissolved into shared passion. But a looming dread settled over her. In the quest for her identity, could she really expect her sister to understand? Struggling to find clarity, Emily sought solace in a nearby cafe. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, mingling with the hum of quiet conversations. It was a holy sanctuary where she could reflect. Yet guilt gripped her as she pulled out her phone for an unsent message, an apology wrapped in a pleading hope for Sarah's forgiveness. No, she thought, she couldn't risk another firestorm. As she sipped her latte, her eyes fell on a couple planning an engagement right next to her. Their laughter resonated around her, stark against her internal turmoil. With each joyous ring of their laughter, Emily felt as though a lingering cloud was forming above her, a reminder of her own encroaching isolation. Then a revelation struck her. Perhaps there was a way to bridge the gap without losing herself entirely. Meeting her sister amidst planning was no longer feasible, but there were elements of support she could offer. She could carve out dedicated time for Sarah, not as an annex to her ambitions, but as an equal prioritization of their lives intertwined. In synergy, they could channel their energies toward their individual dreams, while still building a scaffold of familial love. The decision felt like a fragile victory, yet it ignited a surge of determination. As the cafe's hustle muted around her, Emily opened her notes app and began drafting a message. "Let us plan a weekend together to talk about everything. I need to be there for you too. I need you to know that I care." She paused, letting the words breathe through her fears. Could she finally extend an olive branch without uprooting her ambitions? Would Sarah be receptive after their heated exchange? The split screen of her emotional landscape contrasted like the vibrant ochres of autumn against the muted grays of winter. As she pressed send, a rush of anxiety shot through her, much like the first day of school or a job interview. What if Sarah rejected her offer for reconciliation? What if this moment of vulnerability led them further apart instead of together? Moments turned into hours as she navigated through various responsibilities. Ultimately, it wasn't until her phone buzzed with an unexpected response that her heart began to pound. "Emily, let us talk. I think we need to. You're not the only one who feels lost lately." With that, the promise of exploration and renewed connection unfolded, but in its shadow lurked remnants of unresolved tension. Would she truly be able to balance the fragility of their relationship and her own burgeoning ambitions? The path to her future was far from clear, and with it, the anticipation of facing deep-rooted familial conflicts loomed ever closer. But Emily sensed a turning point emerging, a confrontation with her own failures waiting on the brink. What had she become, and what would the outcome of this impending conversation be? Emily paced the small kitchen of her apartment, her heart unevenly racing as she anticipated their meeting. The bright afternoon sun streamed through the window, illuminating the scattered remnants of her chaotic life. Books piled high, a half-finished project on the dining table, and a coffee cup, now cold and forgotten. She glanced over at her phone, willing it to buzz again, to signal a sudden rush of clarity or courage. Instead, silence echoed loudly, each passing moment deepening her sense of uncertainty. She took a deep breath, the air heavy with the weight of unspoken words. The thought of seeing Sarah again filled her with a mix of hope and trepidation. Emily had imagined countless scenarios playing out. Laughter, tears, and everything in between. However, as the seconds stretched long, all she could picture were her sister's hurt eyes, a reflection of the chasm that had widened between them. After what felt like an eternity, the agreed-upon hour approached. Emily's hand shook slightly as she busied herself with last-minute arrangements. She put a kettle on the stove, planning on serving tea, something soothing for what could be a turbulent conversation. She recalled snippets of advice from books she'd read about conflict resolution, but each tip felt inadequate for the impending emotional storm. When the doorbell rang, Emily's heart lurched. She opened the door to find Sarah standing there, vulnerability etched across her face. Her sister looked different, hollowed out by worry, and overshadowed by the enormity of their fractured relationship. Rather than the usual warmth that enveloped them, this moment felt charged with silent acknowledgement of their distance. "Hey," Emily said, her voice wavering. "Hi," Sarah replied, with uncertainty masking the familiarity in her tone. They settled at the kitchen table, an expanse of wood that felt too wide in that moment. Emily poured the steaming tea, avoiding eye contact, afraid to see the emotions swirling in Sarah's gaze. Instead, she focused on the simple act of preparing the drink, channeling her nervous energy outward as she centered her thoughts on what needed to be said. "Thanks for coming," Emily began, her voice steadier than she felt. "I know we've both been going through a lot of change lately. I wanted to talk about everything." Sarah nodded, the tension palpable. "I hate that it feels like we're drifting apart. It shouldn't be this way. Especially when we're supposed to celebrate each other's milestones." "I know," Emily replied. The guilt surged through her like an electric current. "I didn't mean for it to feel like I was stepping away. I care about you, Sarah. Doing this, starting my program, it feels like I'm taking steps forward. But it doesn't mean I don't want you in my life. I don't understand why you opted out of being part of my wedding planning. It felt like a choice, like you were saying something without saying it." Sarah's voice cracked, the pain riddled through every syllable. Emily inhaled sharply, fortifying herself against the emotional barrage. She felt the weight of Sarah's words like a physical entity, pressing down on her chest. "I thought you needed space. With everything you're juggling, the last thing I wanted to do was add pressure. Instead you disappeared," Sarah fired back, unguarded. "And now we're here, both feeling lost and hurt." The kitchen dimmed as Sarah's words penetrated deeper than Emily anticipated. She felt her own feelings unraveling, and in that moment the realization dawned. This wasn't merely about the wedding or her ambitions. It was about their identities being affected by their choices. "What if we made a pact?" Emily proposed, daring herself to be vulnerable. "Instead of competing for time, let us promise to make equal space for each other's lives. Your wedding, my program. We can do this together, not apart." For a moment, silence draped across the room like a heavy blanket. Sarah's brow furrowed, her mind visibly sifting through the possibility. "You really think we can find a balance?" "I want to try. I don't want to be just a spectator in your life," Emily confessed, feeling that fragile surge of hope. As Sarah's expression softened, a small smile began to form. But just as quickly, the storm cloud of doubt surfaced again. But what if it's not enough? The question hung between them, loaded and unresolved, echoing the risks both faced. Losing, surviving, or perhaps finally stepping into a mutual understanding. Emily held her breath, realizing that this was only the beginning of their reparation. Layers of emotional complexity still needed to be navigated. She could already feel the intensity of the challenge ahead, but there was fresh determination igniting within her. And then her phone buzzed again. This time an email notification, an ominous reminder of her looming responsibilities. "I need to go. But let us keep this dialogue open," she said, wrapping her fingers around the edge of the table, feeling grounded as she entered her office later. A profound ache settled in her chest alongside renewed ambition. The moment felt charged, but one simple truth emerged. Confronting her past was crucial to realizing her future. But now what awaited her in that next email might change everything once more. As Emily read the sender's name, the institution where she'd be studying, the flickering uncertainty slipped back into the periphery, joining the residual tensions and unresolved conflicts she had yet to face. It seemed the next stage of her journey was just about to begin. Emily's heart raced as she opened the email. The subject line alone had sent a wave of anxiety coursing through her. Important update regarding your application. She had worked diligently on her submission, pouring her soul into every word, balancing her hopes and fears about embarking on this new academic chapter. As she clicked through the message, the content blurred momentarily, each phrase thick with expectation. Then it hit her: she was accepted. A rush of exhilaration washed over her, momentarily drowning out the discomfort from her earlier conversation with Sarah. Acceptance into the program seemed like her personal lifeline. A chance to redefine her path was finally granted. Yet, beneath the joy bubbled a gnawing guilt. Was this victory coming at a price? Could her triumph be seen as another point of divergence between her and Sarah? Racing against her thoughts, she could feel the tightrope walk before her, conquering personal goals, while simultaneously risking further emotional distance from her sister. Okay, Emily muttered to herself, combing through her mind for a plan. She had to share her news with Sarah. It might soothe the fractures that had laid bare their relationship. But how and when? With so much unresolved tension lingering in the air, she grappled with the fear of deepening the divide. Days blurred into a muted rhythm, a mix of school preparations and awkward attempts to connect with Sarah. They texted, exchanged pleasantries, but the depth of their earlier conversation hung unacknowledged like a shroud. Emily knew they needed to check in, but guilt turned into a stifling reluctance. It was a simple evening when a spontaneous idea sparked within her, ignited by Sarah's upcoming bridal shower. Emily could take the celebration as an opportunity to share her acceptance, not as an ulterior motive but as an open gesture, an olive branch to rebuild their shattered trust. The event was taking shape, and the atmosphere of joy and anticipation buzzed in her nerves. She arrived carrying a carefully wrapped gift, a token from her heart, but also a subtle reminder of her sister's significance in her life. As the laughter and chatter filled the air, Emily felt a tugging urgency to weave herself back into the fabric of their sisterhood. But during the shower, when the moment arose, Emily hesitated, torn. As she prepared to speak, she caught sight of Sarah surrounded by relatives and friends, her radiant smile reflecting an energy Emily had long missed. The confidence she had gained over the past days wavered. What if this was the wrong moment? Then, before she could talk herself out of it, Emily stood up. Hushed murmurs filled the room as everyone turned in her direction. "I'd like to say something," she began, her voice wavering yet strong, carving out a space amidst the joy. "Sarah, I know things have felt off between us lately, but I want you to know how much you mean to me. I've accepted an offer into my program." Applause erupted, but Emily caught the flicker of something. Was it hurt? Or perhaps confusion? The sparkle in Sarah's eyes was quickly clouded by the realization of their unresolved burdens. The words hung heavily in the air, as if her announcement had introduced a new tension, starker than the one that had already existed. It felt simultaneously liberating yet constricting to have opened that door. What Emily hoped would solidify their bond now felt like it could shift into a fracture anew suddenly. With every soul around them celebrating, she could feel her heart sink. It registered painfully that the distance had not only lingered but had just intensified. "Congratulations," Sarah finally said, her voice steady but her body language distant. Emily absorbed her response. She realized that sharing one golden moment didn't mean the chasm had been crossed. The knot inside her tightened. Here they were, in the midst of a celebration, and yet a subtle tension brewed, one that they both felt but couldn't quite articulate in that moment. That night, the celebration felt like a bittersweet prelude Emily yearned for. Recognition and sisterly connection, but it was dawning upon her that true reconciliation would be a series of deliberate, ongoing efforts. Slowly, she started packing her leftovers when Sarah approached her timidly. "Can we talk?" she asked with a quietness piercing the joyful atmosphere. Emily's heart raced again, this time with a blend of hope and trepidation. It was then she realized that her journey toward reconciliation was itching at the edges of their unsettling reality, and this could be the moment she'd been waiting for. The unfolding scene hinted at uncharted territory, a confrontation that could finally bridge or further widen their gap. With new resolve igniting, Emily nodded, a lingering question coiling in her mind as they stepped outside to talk. What truth would finally emerge in that conversation? Emily stepped outside. The cool evening air contrasted sharply with the warmth of the party behind them. She took a deep breath, trying to anchor her thoughts against the wave of uncertainty. Sarah stood silently, her expression revealing a mix of reluctance and eagerness. This was it, the opportunity to bridge their burgeoning chasm. "Emily," Sarah began, her voice shaky yet layered with determination. "I didn't expect you to share your news like that. It was a big moment, but it felt like you were putting me on the spot." The accusation stung unexpectedly, and Emily could feel her heart constricting under it. "I thought it might lighten the mood. I wanted to share that part of my life with you," she replied, feeling defensive yet strangely vulnerable. Sarah shook her head slightly, frustration flickering in her eyes. "But it was about you. What about how I've been feeling? I never got the chance to express my own worries. You know I've been overwhelmed planning my wedding and I know. And I'm proud of you," Emily interrupted, sensing the familiar resentment bubbling in the pit of her stomach. It was easy to feel sidelined by Sarah's excitement, but this was precisely why they were here, to dismantle the barriers instead of erecting new ones. "I don't want your pity, Emily," Sarah insisted, the tension in her voice sharpening. "You think just because you got accepted into a program, everything is supposed to be fine between us? That we can ignore how I feel about it all?" Emily clenched her fists, wrestling with the impending guilt that always seemed to cloak their discussions. This pivotal moment was spiraling into yet another accusation. "I'm not trying to overshadow you. I thought you thought what?" Sarah countered, her frustration bleeding into silence between them. "That I'd be thrilled for you? I am. It's just everything feels so uneven right now." Another jab took root, the unspoken acknowledgement of their diverging paths without resolution weighed heavy like lead. Emily's mind whirred as she tried to catch her breath in the midst of their escalating emotions. "You think I don't see how hard you're trying? Being happy about something shouldn't require us to compete." "No one is competing, Emily." Sarah's voice cracked, vulnerability seeping through the cracks of her bravado. "Maybe I just wanted to feel like I mattered too, especially now. I've had a lot on my plate, and it feels like every time I want to talk, you're moving forward without me." In that moment, Emily's fight softened. Sarah was right. The gravitational pull toward her academic ambitions was eclipsing their relationship, pulling herself into the center of their emotional landscape. She could feel the swell of empathy crashing against the shore of her own insecurities. "Sarah, I'm scared. I thought that sharing my news would help us reconnect. But I see now how it might have felt like I was just focusing on myself. You matter to me, to everything we've built together." There was a pause, a pregnant silence where their histories floated like ghosts between them. Emily was hit hard with the realization that resolving their conflict required more than just acknowledging her acceptance. It demanded opening up about fears. "I feel lost. What if this program takes me far away, and I become someone else?" Emily admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't want to lose the person I've relied on for so long." As those words hung in the air, a flicker of understanding passed between them, thawing some of the icy tension. "I'm scared too," Sarah revealed, her rigid stance relaxing slightly. "I don't want to lose you either. I need to figure out how to balance these two monumental changes in my life." Just then, the night seemed to swirl with vivid possibilities, a balm to their jagged emotions. It became clear that in confronting their fears, they might begin to heal the rift between them. "Can we promise to work through this together?" Emily suggested, hoping to tether their relationship closer. "Yeah, I'd like that," Sarah replied softly, an earnestness emerging from the undercurrent of their conflict. They lingered in that moment, absorbing the first hints of stability. But without distraction, Emily felt the old doubts creeping back in. This conversation started a connection, but navigating the complexities of the future loomed ominously ahead as they re-entered the buzz of the bridal shower. Laughter and chatter surrounded them, but Emily understood a deeper truth had emerged. It was the beginning of a more profound journey, not just with mastering academics but one rooted in fortifying sisterhood. The issues ahead felt daunting and unresolved, whispering questions about the potential fractures their next steps may create. What would this new understanding mean when faced with future challenges? Would they each prioritize their paths at the expense of their bond? With unanswered thoughts spiraling, Emily realized their conversation wasn't over. True reconciliation required more than words. It needed action. She couldn't shake the apprehension. What would happen when ambition collided with emotional ties? Emily sat in her car the next day, staring at the sun painting the trees in warm yellows and oranges as autumn crept in. Her phone buzzed beside her, pulling her from her wandering thoughts. It was another reminder of the deadline for her program enrollment, an invisible weight pushing her toward a future she both longed for and feared. Taking a deep breath, she shut her eyes briefly, grappling with the chaos inside. Yesterday's conversation with Sarah had left her feeling as though they were on a tightrope, each of them struggling to find balance. What if their newly rekindled understanding fell apart under the pressure of their individual ambitions? Work had been hectic too. As an intern at the design firm, Emily felt both exhilarated by the creative energy and overwhelmed by the expectations. She was determined to prove her worth, yet every new project felt like a test, a constant challenge that left her with no room to express the personal worries consuming her. She wasn't just facing the academic challenge but also the reality of who she was becoming. Driving toward the office, she rehearsed the words she planned to say during her weekly team meeting. I was hoping to take the lead on the upcoming project, she had intended to announce. But doubt gnawed at her. What if her colleagues thought she was stepping out of line, trying to assert herself too boldly? The memory of her conversation with Sarah echoed in her mind. If she couldn't even assert herself in simple matters, how could she ever embrace the broader ambitions of her life? The meeting room was buzzing as she entered, bright-eyed peers chatting about their latest adventures. Emily's heart raced, the familiar rush of adrenaline pushing her toward the table. When it came time for her to speak, she could feel the heat rising in her cheeks. I've been working on some ideas for the new branding project, and I believe I can really lead the team to bring some fresh perspective, she said, her voice wavering slightly at first but gaining strength. I propose we incorporate some innovative design elements that align with current trends. Silence met her proposal, thick and heavy. Then her supervisor, Marcus, leaned forward, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. I like where you're going with this, Emily. What specific trends do you have in mind? A surge of relief mixed with adrenaline swept over her. This was it, her moment to shine. She launched into a presentation of her ideas, fueled by the excitement of validation. Each point sparked interest and she could see her peers nodding, some even jotting down notes. When the meeting wrapped up, Marcus commended her. Great job, Emily. You clearly put a lot of thought into this. Let us have a follow-up next week. That burst of affirmation propelled her through the day, but she couldn't shake the gnawing sense of fragility about her personal life. Would her newfound confidence at work be enough to keep her grounded as her relationship with Sarah took on new dimensions? The stakes felt both exhilarating and terrifying. Later that evening, Emily sat on her couch with a cup of chamomile tea, her laptop open to a page of potential design scholarships. The dim glow of the screen illuminated the pages of dreams and aspirations. As she scrolled through the applications, she realized that the path ahead was daunting, laden with uncertainty. What if she faced rejection as she feared she would in her personal life with Sarah? Embracing her ambition meant risking failure on multiple fronts, teetering between career choices and personal priorities. The text from Sarah that pinged her phone startled her. Can we talk? I think we need to make a plan. Emily's heart sank. While she wanted to reconnect, the looming conversation felt fraught with the same uncertainty that had plagued them before. Would they be able to bridge their individual ambitions while maintaining their bond? As the evening deepened, she felt the pull of both paths, professional success and personal connection, and realized the hardest part was just beginning. In trying to ascend, the very foundation she relied on might be at risk as well. With trepidation, Emily typed a reply, wrestling with her emotions. The time had come to face whether ambition would be her strength or lead to an unbearable fracture in her sisterhood. Would their next conversation unravel the fabric of their relationship further, or weave them closer together? Emily took a deep breath as she stepped out of her car, preparing to meet Sarah at the local cafe. Reconciliation loomed ahead, a path she knew would require navigating a tumultuous sea of emotions and unresolved expectations. She fidgeted with the hem of her jacket, feeling the stable ground beneath her feet for the first time in a while. There was purpose in her stride, a newfound confidence she had nurtured through her experiences in academia and work. As she entered the cafe, the familiar scent of espresso calmed her nerves slightly, though a flicker of anxiety surged within her as she spotted Sarah at a table. Sarah's expression was a blend of apprehension and yearning, a mirror reflecting Emily's own internal struggle. Reverse as it may seem, they were now both reaching toward new heights. "Hey," Emily greeted, sliding into the chair opposite Sarah. "Hey," Sarah replied, her voice soft yet tinged with an intensity that filled the space between them. "I'm glad we could meet," Emily began, her heart pounding as she considered the delicate issues resting on the table. After a moment, Emily took the leap. "I want to talk about our last conversation, and how I've been feeling since you texted me." She held Sarah's gaze, her eyes embodying determination. "Me too," Sarah admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've been thinking about everything. About how it feels like we're striving for different things, but maybe we could also be there for each other in this." There it was, a sliver of hope threading through the heaviness of their past months. "I've realized that I don't want to just push my successes on you. The joy of my acceptance isn't worth the cost of our sisterhood. I don't want this to be about competition," Emily asserted, her voice gaining strength as the words spilled out. A shift occurred. Sarah's eyes softened, and the tension between them began to dissolve. "I want us both to succeed," she confessed. "But if I'm honest, I felt left behind when you took that step toward your dreams. It made me question whether I'd lost our shared paths." Unpacking Sarah's feelings rendered Emily vulnerable in return. "I felt lost too. I didn't mean to overshadow you. I thought focusing on my ambitions would heighten my identity instead of overshadowing us, but maybe I was just running away from the fear that I might lose you." Momentary silence hung between them as each sister absorbed their shared fears, the fracture that ambition had made from the fabric of their lives. "Let us decide what this looks like moving forward," Sarah suggested, determination edging her voice. "What do you mean?" Emily asked, a curiosity igniting within her. "I mean, what if we build a plan together?" Sarah's eyes sparkled with enthusiasm. "A pact where we check in on each other. We keep talking even when it's hard, and help each other pursue these dreams? You help me with the wedding, and I'll support you when things get hectic in school." Emily felt the resonance of Sarah's words echo with hope. The flickering ties that seemed weakened before had now morphed into the foundation upon which they could rebuild. "I love that idea. We can celebrate our wins and lean on each other through the challenges." As they exchanged their plans, a warmth enveloped Emily's heart. She realized in that moment of clarity, the true achievement wasn't merely about individual successes, but the foundation upon which they could stand together stronger than ever as sisters, forging new identities while honoring what they had. Days turned into weeks as they charted their shared course. Emily tackled her programs with fervor, meeting deadlines and showcasing her ideas at design presentations, not as a competitor, but as a part of a supportive duo. She found solace in Sarah's encouragement and creative ideas for the wedding that blended their preferences. This was no longer a solitary climb to the summit for each, but a collaborative ascent. When graduation approached, Emily felt an exhilaration that transcended her success. It was the deeper connection with Sarah that grounded her. On the day of her graduation, she stood proudly on the podium, rewarded for her drive, her innovation, and her hard-earned academic achievements. The loud applause was a validation of her efforts, yet as she looked toward the audience, she spotted Sarah, joy radiating on her face. It wasn't just about her success, it was about the journey that had led them back to each other. Later, as they celebrated at dinner, Emily spoke. "Thank you for believing in me, for helping us rebuild." "I should be thanking you," Sarah replied with sincerity, "for reminding me that we can both have our dreams and still be who we are." With newfound confidence and personal achievements behind them, the sisters found fulfillment not just in their own unique journeys, but in the steadfast bond they cultivated together. This was the beginning of their empowered transformation, a promise to embrace ambition while weaving their paths together, solidly anchored in sisterhood. As the camera panned out, Emily spoke directly to the audience. "You need to subscribe now to witness the transformation of sisterhood and ambition in our next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, and comment your reactions and thoughts about this conclusion. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see the power of reconciliation and ambition intertwined. Don't wait even one more second. Your support matters.